Chris and William are getting ready for the day. Which of them doesn't live alone? William is brushing his teeth, but there is one more toothbrush in the bathroom. It's likely to belong to someone else, so I'd say William doesn't live alone. Now, take a look at these pictures of Philip and Kai. One of them lives with his girlfriend. Can you tell who it is? There's a pair of high heels and a dress in Philip's wardrobe. He probably has a girlfriend. Look at Luna and Evadine's rooms. One of the girls has a sister who she shares the room with. Can you tell who has a sister? There's a bunk bed in Luna's room. I bet she has a sibling. Okay, one of these guys has a cat. Can you tell who it is? It's the guy on the right. Look, the wallpaper at the bottom of the wall is scratched. Now, I'll be showing you some pictures one by one. Your task is to find what's wrong with them. Ready? Here's the first one. The sun is shining, but the camels don't cast shadows. Here's the next one. What's really off here? Look at the flag at the top of the building and at the tree nearby. It seems that the wind is blowing in different directions. This is impossible. This one is pretty simple. What will you say? The reflection in the mirror is wrong. Pay attention to the smallest details. What's wrong here? The school bus doesn't have a door. Something's off with this image. What is it? Look at the clock. In the winter, no sunset can happen at this hour. Esme was walking in the forest. She got lost, but found the witch's house. She walked in to ask for her help. The witch and the cat had a guest. The witch's grandson came to visit. The grandson had heard of Esme and of her ability to solve riddles. So, he had a riddle for her too. He took a t-shirt and cut 2 holes in it. The question was, how many holes does the t-shirt have now? Eight. With 2 holes cut through, there are 2 on each side, 4 in total. Plus, there are 2 holes for the arms, 1 for the head, and 1 at the bottom. Every weekday, Kennedy eats an apple on her way to work. Once, she noticed a woman selling flowers. The woman gave a man a bouquet and said, "Tuna sandwich." The next day, it was yogurt, directed at another person. On the 3rd day, it was eggs. Kennedy got curious and walked up to the woman to get some flowers. The woman said apple. What was her weird ability? The woman always knew the last thing her client ate. Simon had a crush on a new girl in his class. Finally, he asked her out on a date. To impress her, he told the girl he had undergone a special secret training program. And then he visited the moon. He even had a picture. The girl took a look at it but didn't believe Simon. Why? In the picture, Simon is standing on the moon. Still, there's another moon in the background, which is impossible. He might have cool Photoshop skills, but he definitely hadn't thought it through. One rich and well-known elderly woman, Mrs. Stevenson, had been living alone for years. She had one interesting quirk. Every time someone rang the doorbell, she wouldn't open the door without putting on her coat and hat first. Can you guess why? She didn't know who the visitor was until she opened the door. If she liked that person, she'd tell them she'd just returned home and invite them to come in. If it was someone she didn't want to spend time with, she said she was leaving. Mrs. Jordan loved music, so she sent her daughter, Gianna, to music school. The woman made the girl play every day. Once, Mrs. Jordan had to go on a business trip for 2 weeks. She asked Gianna to practice every day, and the girl agreed. When Mrs. Jordan came back 2 weeks later, she realized Gianna hadn't been practicing. How did she understand it? The piano is dusty, which means it's been a while since Gianna last opened it. A group of aliens from another galaxy discovered planet Earth and decided to study people. 4 of them turned into humans and went to our planet to explore. But the aliens didn't really succeed in pretending to be humans. Take a look at these photos and try to find an alien. Here's the first image. Can you spot anything strange? This guy's skin is blue. He must be the alien. This one's harder. Do you see a fake human here? It's winter and it's cold, but this guy is only wearing shorts. That's some non-human ability to tolerate cold temperatures. What about this one? Take a closer look at what this guy is eating. It doesn't look like human food at all. Okay, what do you say here? Did you notice this one has 6 fingers? I bet it's him. Mrs. Lawrence has 3 daughters who she doesn't allow to go outside after 8 p.m. The woman was at work when a neighbor called her and said she'd seen one of her daughters in the mall. Mrs. Lawrence immediately called each of her girls. Mia said she'd been playing badminton outside. Nicole said she had an online study session with her friends. Quinn said she'd been playing computer games. Who lied? Mia. She couldn't play badminton alone, and since her sisters were all busy, they couldn't play with her. I have a friend, Anna. Her mom is the most unusual person I know. She has green hair, wears skirts with trousers, and has a pet raccoon. She also has 3 daughters. Her oldest daughter's name is Wednesday. Her middle daughter's name is Thursday. Can you guess what her youngest daughter's name is? Well, it's Anna's mom, so her 3rd daughter's name is Anna. On the first day of college, Ruby went missing. A detective had 3 suspects: Mrs. Collins, the director, Mr. Wright, the cleaning man, and Cassidy, Ruby's best friend. Mrs. Collins said that she had to do her midterm report and hadn't left her office. Mr. Wright said he hadn't even seen the girl. Cassidy said they'd spent the whole day together at college. But then Ruby went home. Who is lying? It must be the director, Mrs. Collins. It was the first day of college. There couldn't possibly be any midterm reports yet. Della and Aurora always tell the truth, but on their birthdays, they always lie. Today is September 3rd, and their friend Mark asks them when their birthdays are. Della says it was yesterday. Aurora says it's tomorrow. The next day, the guy asks the same question, but their answers don't change. When are the girls' birthdays? Each of them lied on one of the days, so these 2 days must be their birthdays. Della said it was yesterday both times, so her birthday must be on September 3rd. Then, the next day, she told the truth. September 4th is Aurora's birthday. She told the truth on the first day and then lied on her birthday. Hazley and Skylar are jaywalking. Hazley is listening to music and Skylar is texting. Who is in danger? It's Skylar. She's jaywalking right where the road takes a turn. There's a car approaching her, and the driver might not have enough time to react. Serafina and Flora wanted to go to a party, but their parents had grounded them. Serafina decided to leave through the back door, and Flora wanted to sneak out through her bedroom window. Who will not make it to the party? Probably Flora. Her father is sitting next to her window reading a book. He'll probably see her leaving. Brooke and Sydney were going to learn how to swim. Brooke went to the lake near her house, and Sydney went to the ocean with her friends. Who is in greater danger? Brooke. She went alone. There was no one around to save her in case something goes wrong. Brielle got a new bike as a present for her birthday. It was a surprise, so she locked it in the room and left for work. When she returned, the bike wasn't there. She realized someone in her family must have pulled a prank. Her brother said he hadn't seen anything. Her dad said he'd noticed a bike while walking past her room, but she was in a hurry to get to work. Her mom said she'd spent the day downstairs making a cake. Who pulled the prank? It must be Brielle's dad. She locked the room so he couldn't see the bike unless he walked in. In a magical world, there are two cities connected by a bridge. The city on the left bank of the river is guarded. No one can enter or leave it without written permission. Ellie was held captive in this city. She managed to escape and needed to get to the other side. It took 10 minutes to cross the bridge, but the guard came out of his house every 5 minutes. How can Ellie cross the bridge? Ellie should leave the city when the guard goes back to his house. 5 minutes later, she should turn around and walk back towards the guard. When she approaches the man, he'll think she's trying to come in. But since Ellie won't have any permission, he'll send her back to the city on the right bank of the river. Echo is taking part in a game show. He has a chance to win $10,000. Finally, it was time for the last task. The guy has to put his head in one of 3 boxes. In the first one, there are hanging electrical wires. In the second, there are hundreds of Venus flytraps. In the third box, there are dozens of scorpions. Which box should he choose to win the prize and stay safe? He should choose the second box. Venus flytraps don't harm people. Emilia's uncle was a mysterious man working on some secret project in his lab in the basement. He never allowed the girl in. So one day, when the man went to get a cup of coffee, Emilia broke into his lab. The door immediately closed behind her back and locked automatically. The lab was a teleportation machine. It could take Emilia to one of 3 places. The first place was the ocean where the Titanic had sunk. The second one was the city of Pompeii. A volcano erupted there many centuries ago. The last place was the Bermuda Triangle. What is the safest place for Emilia to go? I'd pick Pompeii. Going to the Titanic or the Bermuda Triangle would take her to the middle of the ocean. And the volcano in Pompeii erupted centuries ago. Now it's safe to be there. Gideon was locked in a dark dungeon. There were 3 ways out. Behind the first door, there was a room full of poisonous bees that could make people hallucinate. Behind the second door, there was a room without oxygen. Behind the third door, there was a room full of unfriendly aliens. Which way should he choose? The room without the oxygen seems the most promising option. Gideon can hold his breath and quickly walk through the room. In a quiet neighborhood, someone broke into Mr. Edwards' house at night and stole his collection of jewelry. He reported the burglary, and a detective came to investigate the case. First, he visited the neighbors. The detective asked them what they were doing the night before. Kira said she'd been watching TV all night and hadn't gone anywhere. Abel said he'd been on the plane, getting back from Madrid. He just returned home a couple of minutes ago after a month in Spain. Chris said that he'd been sleeping. After the interrogation, the detective knew who the thief was. Have you figured it out? This was Abel. He said he'd just come back home, but look at his kitchen table. There are fresh fruits lying there. If he had been absent for a month, they would have gone rotten by now. It was a cold and rainy day. Detective Callum was in his office when he got a call from a hotel's cleaning man. He said he'd found an unconscious woman in one of the rooms. Detective Callum arrived immediately. By that time, the woman, whose name was Anna, had already come to her senses. The detective asked if there was someone in the city who could help her. Anna said she had a sister, but the woman didn't know anything about her arrival because Anna wanted to surprise her. The detective called Anna's sister and said, "Your sister arrived at the city, but someone attacked her. Please come as soon as possible." As soon as the woman arrived, she was arrested. Why? Anna said that her sister didn't know she was going to visit her. Detective Callum didn't specify where exactly the sister should come, but she still managed to find them. For some reason, she knew where the place was. Autumn is an archaeologist exploring an ancient cave. After a month down there, she found a hidden place with 3 chests. One of them had gold in it. But if the woman picked the wrong chest, she'd get locked in the cave forever.
Uh-oh.
The note on the first chest said, "The gold isn't in chest 2. The second note said, "The gold is in chest 1 or 3. And the last one said, "The gold isn't here." Which chest should she open? If the gold isn't in the second chest, it must be in the first or the third one. But the note on the third chest claims the gold isn't there, so it must be in the first chest. Ben works at a VIP club. His job is to not let any young or suspicious people in. Every day, some visitors with fake IDs try to sneak in, and Ben has to detect which documents are fake. Here are some IDs. Your task is to help Ben decide if people they belong to can enter. Here, look at this one. What will you say? It seems like she was born on the 28th of the 13th month. This ID doesn't look real. Great, another one for you. Should Ben let this guy in? This person is supposed to be 46 years old, but in this photo, he looks like a teenager. I think Ben shouldn't let him in. This is suspicious. What can you say this time? In or out? This ID seems real. I think it's safe to let her in. Another person, another decision. Does anything bother you here? Nope, he seems fine to me. One more to go. Should Ben let her in? Look at her address. Canada, USA? This is weird. I bet it's a fake ID. So I'd say, nope. Mason went to visit his grandma, who lived in a different part of his neighborhood. While he was in her house, his bike got stolen. Mason called the police. He said that he'd seen the bike had been taken by Mr. Jones. It was the neighbor the guy had always been arguing with. Mason and a detective came to visit Mr. Jones. The police officer asked if the man had stolen the bike. Mr. Jones denied doing it, saying he just finished painting his fence. The detective believed him. Why? His story seems true. There's fresh paint on the grass by the fence, which proves that Mr. Jones indeed painted it just recently. When Quinn returned home after walking her dog, she found out someone had stolen her favorite bracelet from her room.
Oh no!
Her sister, Belle, also liked it. So Quinn went to find her and asked if she had taken the accessory. The girl ran into Belle as she was leaving the bathroom. Belle denied taking the bracelet, saying that she'd been in the shower this whole time. She didn't even have time to enter her sister's room. Quinn sneaked a peek into the bathroom and realized Belle was lying about taking a shower. How did she understand it? If Belle had really taken a shower, the bathroom mirror would be foggy, but look, it's absolutely clear. The city's richest lady, Mrs. Anderson, came to watch a football game. She was sitting on the best seat in the first row. In the middle of the game, she noticed that someone had stolen her diamond necklace. Luckily, a detective was sitting right next to her. He started to observe people around. One person became his main suspect. And who do you suspect? Look, there's a guy dressed as a football player with a number 7 on his back. But as you can see, number 7 is playing the game. Someone must have dressed as a player to blend in. Evie was living with her partner. She didn't want to tell her parents about her relationship yet, so she kept it a secret. Once, her mother came from another city to visit Evie. The girl's partner was on a business trip at that time, so she decided to pretend that she lived alone. And still, her mother could tell that Evie was dating someone. How did she figure it out? There are 2 toothbrushes in the bathroom. One of them is likely to belong to someone else. Alice and Dakota work in the city's animal shelter on the weekends. Alice walks the dog and Dakota feeds the cats. Who does something wrong? Dakota. She gives the cats dog food. Sophie and Ever are having a picnic in the park. Sophie is talking to her brother on the phone, and Ever is eating berries from a bush. Who is not smart? Ever. There is a warning sign saying the berries are poisonous. A family is working in the backyard. Atlas is mowing the lawn, and Cassidy is watering the flowers. Can you tell who is doing something wrong? Atlas. It seems that his lawnmower doesn't work properly because the grass doesn't get cut. Tatum woke up in a hospital. 2 men came to visit her. Both of them claim to be her doctor. Can you tell who the real doctor is? Look, this man's name tag says Olivia, which means the real doctor is on the right, and the one on the left must have stolen someone else's uniform. 2 students, Elsa and Isla, are spending the afternoon in the park. Elsa is having lunch sitting on the grass, and Isla is reading on a bench. Who is less smart? Isla. The bench has a sign, wet paint. Mrs. Evans came to a cafe to have lunch and saw her daughter Scarlett sitting at one of the tables. She came up to her and asked the girl why she wasn't at school. Scarlett said that her last class had finished a bit earlier and that she came here just a couple of minutes ago to get an iced coffee. She promised to be gone in 5 minutes. Still, her mother didn't believe her and grounded Scarlett for missing school. Why? The ice in Scarlett's coffee had already melted. This means that she'd been here for a while, way longer than she claims. Melanie was having her written economics exam. One of the questions she had to answer was, what is the risk? She answered the question with just one word, but still got the highest mark. What was the word she wrote? She must have written the word this. Mr. Robinson is a successful businessman. One morning, he had an insight. Later that day, he invited two of his best managers to his office to discuss this breakthrough. Which of these men is Mr. Robinson? It's the man on the right. His suit jacket is on the boss's chair. It's an animal. Take away its last letter, and you'll get a water body where this creature usually catches fish. What is it? It's a seal, which transforms into the sea. Tilda's mother has 7 daughters. The names of her 6 daughters are Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Can you guess the 7th daughter's name? That's right, it's Tilda. It begins and ends with E, but only has one letter. What is it? The right answer is an envelope. Mrs. Sally baked her favorite chocolate cookies for a charity fair. She left them on the kitchen table and went to the garden. When she came back, all the cookies had been eaten. Mrs. Sally got very angry and questioned her 3 children. Her eldest son, David, said he hadn't eaten the cookies because he had spent all day in the garden. Her middle daughter, Shelley, wiped some crumbs off her face and said she'd just eaten a sandwich. The youngest daughter, Sarah, said she didn't eat sweets because she was on a diet. Mrs. Sally knew exactly who was lying. Have you figured it out too? It was David. Mrs. Sally was in the garden when someone ate the cookies. If she had seen David there, he wouldn't be among the suspects. Look at the picture. Can you find the odd star? The star that's different is in the left corner. The middle of this star is smaller than that of the rest. Delivery guy Robert entered a jewelry store to pick up an expensive diamond necklace for his boss. Saleswoman Daphne took the necklace out of the safe and was about to pack it in a box. But suddenly, the lights went off in the entire store. When the lights turned on a couple of seconds later, the necklace was gone. The alarm went off and the store doors slammed shut. But only Robert, Daphne, and one other customer called Vicky remained inside. The police came over and interrogated all of them. Robert said he hadn't seen anything. Daphne said she had felt someone push her in the dark. They must have taken the box. And Vicky claimed she had been choosing rings for her upcoming wedding in the opposite corner of the store. The detectives immediately understood who the robber was. What about you? Vicky stole the necklace. She's already wearing a wedding ring on her finger. Kitty was walking in the woods and got lost. At one point, she met a magic fox. The fox said, "If you can solve my riddle, I'll help you find your way home. But if you don't, you'll turn into a fox and stay here with me."
Uh-oh.
When you have it, you want to share it. But if you share it, you don't have it. What is it? Kitty returned home that night. What did she say to the fox? It's a secret. If you share a secret, you can't keep it anymore. Look at the picture. How many squares do you see? A. 10. B. 5. C. 3. D. 6. You're right. There are 10 squares. You're supposed to count all the colors. Stephen had a dream of becoming a successful geologist and traveling the world. That's why he took a very difficult test and answered all the questions correctly. Professor Smith said he had one final question for Stephen. If the guy answered it correctly, he'd go on an exciting mountain expedition the following week. Mount Everest was discovered in 1852, but what was the highest mountain in the world before that? The next week, Stephen was proudly walking in the mountains with his colleagues. What did he say to the professor? Stephen said it was Mount Everest. It was still the highest mountain in the world, even though it hadn't been discovered yet. Jenny worked as a cleaning lady at a museum. Once, she found a beautiful diamond ring on a sink while she was cleaning the ladies' room. 3 people showed up to claim it. Tyler said he hadn't seen the ring after visiting the bathroom. He needed to get it back to propose to his girlfriend. Kelly showed Jenny a tan line on her finger and said it was her engagement ring. Leah just asked whether there was an engraving on the inside of the ring. Jenny decided that the ring belonged to Leah. Why? Kelly's tan line was on the wrong finger. Tyler wouldn't have been allowed into the ladies' room, and Leah was the only one who knew the ring had an engraving. Susie entered an elevator and pressed the 7th floor where she lived. Suddenly, the elevator got stuck between floors. Susie got anxious and hit the emergency button. The operator said, "I'll restart the elevator, but first, you have to solve my riddle." "What can you hold without touching it?" he asked. 1 minute later, Susie was on her floor. What did she say to the operator? Breath. You can hold it without using your hands. It belongs to your friend, but you use it way more than them. What is it? That's right, it's your friend's name. Alice was walking in a field and suddenly saw a white rabbit. She took a picture of the animal. Suddenly, the rabbit said, "Hey, I can show you where the treasures are hidden." Alice got very excited, but then her friend called her, and the rabbit ran away. When Alice returned to the field the next day, she saw 9 rabbits. They all kept silent. Can you help Alice find the right rabbit? It's over there, in the right corner. What substance is there in each mug? 1. It's not sugar or water. 2. It's not sugar or tea. 3. It's not tea or water. The first mug contains tea. The second mug contains water. And the third mug is full of sugar. Gemma overslept and arrived at her office an hour later than usual. She found a beautiful bouquet of roses on her table. Gemma got very excited when she saw a postcard tucked among the flowers. She reached for it and accidentally pricked her finger on a thorn. The card said the flowers were from a secret admirer. Gemma looked attentively at her 3 colleagues. Serge was on the phone. Will was printing out some documents. He winked at the girl, and Peter was making coffee. He offered Gemma to join him. At that moment, Gemma understood who had sent her the bouquet. How? It was Serge. He had a fresh scratch left by a thorn on his finger. Rotate it 90 degrees, and it's everything. Cut it in half, and it's nothing. What is it? When you cut 8 in half, it turns into 2 zeros. If you place it on the side, 8 turns into the infinity symbol. The more it dries, the wetter it gets. What is it? It's a towel. Tim loved his girlfriend Christy very much, so he went to a tattoo artist to get her name tattooed on his arm. But the artist turned out to be a crazy scientist. He used Tim's DNA to create 2 evil clones. When Christy came to the tattoo parlor to pick Tim up, she saw 3 identical guys. Help Christy determine which Tim is the real one. The guy on the left is the real Tim. He's the only one who has a tattoo. The clones aren't supposed to have any. How many months of the year have 28 days? All 12 months. Look at the picture. Which one is different? It's A. The color that should be at the top is at the bottom. Helen was a famous singer. When she was applying her makeup in the dressing room, her agent called her. He said that her song had become the main hit of the year. Helen told her assistant, Nick, "Hurry up, bring my best friend Lisa here. I want to celebrate." Nick came out of the dressing room and saw a crowd of fans in front of him. All of them wanted to get Helen's autograph. Nick asked, "Which one of you is Lisa?" Each girl claimed she was Lisa. Help Nick to identify the real Lisa. The real Lisa is wearing a necklace with the left half of the heart on her neck. It matches the one Helen is wearing. Josh left his office earlier that day and decided to take a walk through the park. But suddenly, it started to rain. Unfortunately, Josh forgot his umbrella and hat at work. His clothes were soaked, but not a single hair on his head got wet. How did he do that? Josh was bald. Richard is a famous writer. On a Sunday morning, he finally finished his book and called his agent Stacy to share the good news. Stacy came to his house at 9 a.m. She found Richard unconscious on the floor.
Oh, no.
His laptop with the new book had disappeared. Stacy called the police. The detectives arrived immediately and questioned everyone who had been in the house. The nanny said she had driven Richard's son to school. The gardener said he'd had a day off and spent time with his family. The driver said he had taken Richard's car to a car wash. Once the detective listened to everyone's stories, they knew who was lying. How did they find out? The nanny was lying. She said she had taken Richard's sons to school. But schools are closed on Sundays.
A young woman went to another town to look for a better job. She promised her mother she would come and visit her often. But 4 months passed, and she still didn't come home. Her mother missed her very much. One day, in the middle of winter, the woman shouted, "April is here!" How is it possible? April was her daughter's name. She finally came to visit her family. It's usually under you. Take away its first letter, and it'll be above you. Take away its first 2 letters, and you won't see it. What is it? It's a chair, which can transform into hair and air. Look at this picture and try to understand what's wrong with it. Why would this young lady put a pair of boots on the table and a saw in the fridge? How about this image? Does anything strike you as odd? There's a snowman in the oven and a fish in the toaster. Dennis, Maria, and Julie were at a party. They decided to play a game. There were 5 hats, 2 red ones and 3 yellow ones. The friends closed their eyes, took random hats, and put them on their heads. Then they opened their eyes and looked at one another. Each of them had to guess what color the hat on their head was. Dennis and Julie said they didn't know, but Maria exclaimed that she knew the color of her hat. What color was it? It was yellow. Maria saw that Dennis and Julie were wearing red hats, and she knew there were only 2 of those. You can't share it until you take it. What is it? It's a photo. You see a combination of letters OTTFFSS. What should be the next 3 letters in the line? They should be ENT. These are the first letters of the names of the numbers from 1 to 10. Michael was walking along the street when a sealed envelope landed near his feet. The guy picked it up. Inside, there was a key and a note. It said, "Help, 323." Michael entered the building. Soon, he found a door number 323 and used the key to open it. He saw a man near the open window. He was gagged and tied to a chair. Once free, the man exclaimed, "2 men broke into my office, tied me up, and took all the money from my safe. Luckily, my hands were free. I managed to write this note and throw it together with the key out the window." Michael didn't believe the man and called the police. Why? The envelope was sealed. How could the man do it if he was gagged? It can never be thrown, but it can be caught. People are always looking for ways to lose it. What is it? It's a cold. 2 teams were playing soccer against each other. Each of the teams scored 2 goals in total. And still, it wasn't a tie. One team won and the other lost. How come? One of the teams scored an own goal. Young but very popular blogger Eric wrote his first book. It was a huge success. The guy was preparing for his first book signing. He was very excited and nervous, so he took a break to steady his nerves in a quiet corner. But even at 6 p.m., when the meeting was supposed to start, Eric was nowhere to be seen. In 10 minutes, a security guard found him lying on the floor in the bathroom. Someone had hit the writer on the head. The police had 3 suspects. Angela, his agent, said she had been solving some urgent organizational issues. Frank, one of the fans, said he had been a great lover of Eric's books for years. He wouldn't do anything to harm the writer. And Patrick, the security guard, said he had been doing his job, keeping the fans away from the entrance. Who hit Eric? It was Frank. It was Eric's first book. Frank couldn't possibly be reading his books for years. Look at these guys carefully. Who is a fake fireman? It's the guy on the right. He's not wearing a helmet and doesn't have a special bag. Plus, his pants aren't part of the uniform. You have 3 empty cups and 10 sugar cubes. You need to distribute these sugar cubes between the cups so that each of them contains an odd number of cubes. Put 3 sugar cubes in the first cup and 3 cubes in the second one. After that, put the remaining 4 cubes and the second cup in cup number 3. Now, the first cup has 3 sugar cubes, and the second one has 3 sugar cubes too. As for the third cup, it has 7 sugar cubes, 4 of its own and 3 in the second cup. 2 roommates, Deborah and Rachel, were walking home after doing their weekly grocery shopping. Deborah kept complaining about how heavy her bags were. Then Rachel told her, "I don't understand why you're upset. If you gave me one of your bags, I would have twice more bags than you do. And if I gave you one of mine, we would have the same number of bags." How many bags were the girls carrying? Rachel had 7 bags, while Deborah was only carrying 5 bags. Detective Black's assistant, Josh, was late for work. When he arrived, he told his boss the following story. "I was driving along the highway when I saw an unconscious man lying on the left side of the road. I picked him up and took him to the nearest hospital. Finally, he came to his senses. He told me he had been pushed out of the moving vehicle. The bag and all of his money and documents were left inside." But Detective Black said the man was lying. How did he figure it out? If the man had indeed been pushed out of the car, he would have been lying on the right side of the road, not the left one. Kenneth was starving. He found a nice diner that served burgers and bought one. After a waiter brought him his order, Kenneth went to the bathroom to wash his hands. But when he came back, his burger was gone. The guy looked around the diner and understood who had taken his lunch. Can you figure it out? It's the young woman with a dog sitting at her feet and sniffing the air. If she was just drinking coffee, which is what she's pretending to do, the dog wouldn't be so interested in her. Mary was walking through the park when she spotted a hungry dog. The woman decided to share her snack with the animal. Unfortunately, there was a stream between her and the pooch. She squatted down to attract the dog's attention and showed it the food. The animal was next to her in no time. There was no bridge over the stream, and still the dog wasn't wet. How is it possible? It happened in the winter, and the stream was frozen. A rich entrepreneur disappeared from his office. The only thing he left behind was a note with the numbers 6, 4, 9, 10, and 11, and a calendar. The police have 5 suspects: James, Kevin, Carol, Jason, and Laura. Who knows something about the man's disappearance? It's Jason. The numbers mean months of the year, and the first numbers of these months make up the culprit's name, Jason. Matthew bought a new smartphone and a phone case. He paid $310. The gadget cost $300 more than the case. How much did Matthew pay for the phone? He paid $305. Tony was hosting a party. 3 hours after it started, several guests came up to the guy. They asked where they could charge their phones. Unfortunately, there was only one socket in Tony's house. The guy checked all the power strips he had. Help him figure out how many phones he can charge at a time. Tony can charge 8 phones. Look, one strip has its cord cut. The strip with one socket is literally useless. One of the strips doesn't have a cord whatsoever. Another has no hole for a plug. Plus, one socket on each of the 2 strips will be taken by the plugs from the others. A rich businessman called the police. When he arrived at his office in the morning, he remembered he had left a bunch of important documents in his safe at home. He sent his secretary, John, to bring them. But the guy called half an hour later. He said the safe was open. The documents were still inside, but all the money had disappeared. The police examined the businessman's home office. They tried to find some fingerprints. Nothing at all. The detective had 3 suspects: the secretary, the businessman's nephew, Mark, and the housekeeper. The secretary said he had called his boss as soon as he had seen the safe. Mark said, "I opened the door for John. Then I went to my room and found out about the accident only after John called me." The housekeeper told the police she had been very busy with her chores and hadn't been to the office since the previous evening. Who took the money? It was the secretary. There were no fingerprints in the room, but John was there and definitely touched different things. If he hadn't been guilty, he wouldn't have wiped his fingerprints off. Can you find a dino that is different than the rest? Right, it's this one. Doris was having a beach vacation with her friend Teresa. One morning, the young women were sunbathing near the water. Teresa went to a cafe to get some lemonade while Doris went swimming. When Doris came back, she saw that her smartphone, which she had left on her beach towel, was gone. "Have you seen my phone?" she asked the man sunbathing nearby. "Nah, I've been sleeping all this time." At this moment, Teresa came back with the lemonade. She looked around and immediately understood where Doris's phone was. Who took it? It was the man, all right. Before the incident, the spade was lying on his left. Now it's on the right. There's also a suspicious pile of sand near the spade now. The man must have hidden the phone in the sand, hoping to dig it out later. Terry invited his friend Alice, who was studying to become a police officer, to a party. It was organized by his friend Sean. Terry was worried there could be a thief at this party. Throughout the event, Alice was watching the guests attentively. At the end of the party, she told Terry who the thief was. Have you figured it out? It's the host, Sean. At the beginning of the party, one of the guests had a watch on his wrist, and this woman had a beautiful necklace. But at the end of the party, the watch is already on Sean's wrist, and the necklace is in the flower pot. Detective Carlson was walking along the street when he heard the sound of glass shattering. He looked around and saw a large crowd gathering near the broken window of a jewelry store. The shocked owner was inside. The detective ran up to him. "Has anything been stolen?" The man said he hadn't understood yet, but then Carlson exclaimed, "Sorry, I've got a thief to catch," and rushed away. What did he see? The store window was broken to distract everyone. People were looking away and didn't see this guy stealing a wallet from the man in a suit. At first, the wallet was in the man's pocket. Now the thief is rushing away, the wallet in his hand. The police had long suspected that Mr. Hall was a smuggler, transporting forbidden things on his yacht. That day, they knew for sure the cargo they were looking for was on his vessel. Several police officers came with a search warrant to the marina where Mr. Hall's yacht was parked. They examined every nook and cranny of the yacht, but didn't find what they were looking for. Mr. Hall was sneering while seeing them off. Suddenly, the youngest police officer exclaimed, "I know where the cargo is!" What did he understand? The cargo could only be underwater. Wrapped in a protective cover, it was tied to the anchor. Look at these guys carefully. One of them is not living alone. Who is it? It's the man on the right. He's got 2 toothbrushes. Austin, a rich businessman, brought very important documents to his office. But he had a meeting and needed to leave for several hours. Austin asked his secretary to be on the lookout for anything suspicious. His competitors could try to break into his office to look at the documents. When he came back, his secretary told Austin everything had been quiet. But when the man looked around, he realized someone had been inside his office. The secretary eventually admitted having fallen asleep while Austin was away. How did the businessman understand someone had visited his office? The globe on his desk is now turned in the opposite direction. William, a successful businessman, was having dinner at an expensive restaurant. At one point, he went outside to make an important call. When he returned, his case with money and documents was gone. The thief could only be another customer. When the police arrived, they questioned everyone who was in the restaurant. Karen said she had been writing a new chapter of her book. Paul said he had been waiting in a line to get to the bathroom. Donna had already paid for her coffee and was putting on her coat. And Robert was having a video call with his girlfriend. It didn't take detectives long to figure out who the thief was. Do you know it? The criminal is Paul. Besides him, there were only 4 other visitors at the restaurant, and they were all busy. How could there be any line for the bathroom? The police got informed that one of the most wanted criminals, Carl Walker, was going to arrive in the country. According to this information, the man was going to come by plane. Unfortunately, the police knew very little about him. He was short, wearing glasses, and traveling under a false name. Detective Adams went to the airport. He detained 4 people who fit the description. They were Mr. Lewis, Mr. Relcaw, Mr. Taylor, and Mr. Wilson. Look at these men carefully and try to figure out who the criminal is. It's Mr. Relcaw. His last name is actually the criminal's last name, Walker, but with its letters reversed. A detective is looking for an important witness. Without them, she won't be able to solve a complicated case. The only thing she knows is that the witness is left-handed. Look at these people and help the detective choose the person she needs. It's the waitress. She's holding the tray with her right hand and serving people with her left dominant hand. Look at these princesses and try to figure out which of them is the fake one. It's the princess on the right. The tiaras of the princess on the left and the one in the middle have a reflective shine to them. You can see they are made of precious metals. But the ice princess's tiara doesn't shine. It's made of plastic. A businessman arrived at his office after a long trip. He discovered that some important documents had disappeared from his desk. He immediately called the police, and a detective arrived shortly after. After interviewing all the workers, he had a list with 3 suspects on it. They were Emma, the accountant, Sophia, the receptionist, and James, the sales manager. But all of these people claimed they hadn't been inside the businessman's office. It didn't take the detective long to figure out who was lying. Do you have any ideas? The thief is James. Both women wear high heels in the office, but the footprints on the floor are obviously left by a pair of sneakers. An elderly lady called the police. She told them someone had sneaked into her house while she had been asleep. The intruder took away the money she kept hidden in her kitchen cupboard. The woman was sure it was one of her neighbors. The police visited all the neighbors, but each of them claimed they had spent the entire day at home. Look at their houses and try to figure out who the thief is. Rick is lying. He wasn't at home. His car was parked near the house already after the snow had built up on the driveway. Look at these people carefully. Who does this dog belong to? The dog's owner is the guy in the middle. He's the only one who isn't trying to pet the animal. Can you figure out how many watermelons there are in this picture? Five. Gloria failed her math test. Luckily, her professor was an understanding woman. She offered a deal. If the girl cracked 3 riddles, she'd get a good mark. Of course, Gloria agreed. The first task was to figure out the answer to the equation. Can you do the same? The answer is 232. Gloria didn't need much time to solve it and got the next puzzle. The student saw several numbers made up of matches. What should be the last number? The last number should be 1. After every step, the number of joints goes down by 1. And finally, the teacher gave Gloria several pool balls. Use only 3 of them to make this equation true. After a couple of minutes, Gloria figured out the way to do it. Do you know what she did? The girl rotated 9 and got 6. After that, she took the balls with numbers 13, 11, and 6 and got 30. Gloria's quick wit helped her, and she passed the test. You're trapped in a room with no doors or windows. All of a sudden, the room starts filling with water. You check everywhere, but can't find any way to turn it off. You know that help is on the way, but it's still at least 5 minutes until their arrival. You only have 2 minutes. After that, the entire room will be flooded. Obviously, you can't hold your breath for 3 minutes. You've got 3 objects, but only one of them can save your life. What should you choose? A straw, a rope, or an empty bucket? You should opt for the bucket. Put it on your head. This will create an air pocket, and you'll be able to breathe for a couple of minutes until help arrives. You've got lost in a desert. It's already dark, but bright moonlight illuminates the surroundings. At one point, you see a tower, but an evil wizard is looking out of the window. He tells you, "If you want to save your life, solve my riddle. You need to figure out the height of this tower." You look around and see nothing but several fallen tree branches. There's also a watch on your wrist and your own shadow. What can you use to figure out how high the tower is? Your shadow will help you. You can compare its length with the length of the shadow cast by the tower. Then, since you know your height, you can calculate the height of the tower.